you and I are seeing each other because our brain is actually interpreting the frequencies from the screen that I can hang out with, because I want to learn from them. I want to develop what they have, because if I do what they've done, I can get what they've got. I can't get what they've got if I don't do what they've done and read what they've done, do the studies. Everything is connected. We're beads on a string. There's nothing that's disconnected. There's nothing wrong with the Russians, nothing wrong with the Chinese. There's nothing. We're all just beings trying to function. Now, how are these people losing weight without any diet? I said, it's not about your diet. It's about what's eating you. If we can change what's eating you, you'll change what you're eating.
What's up, everybody? This is Simon. On this episode of The Ideal Hour, I have Dr. Patrick Porter. This is going to be a great episode because Dr. Patrick Porter, or Patrick, we should call him, specializes in brainwave thinking, kind of the energy behind it, the vibrations. The energy is very important. We're going to talk about energy on this episode. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. And Patrick, I really love to know more about what you do to develop your products. I know you're a CEO of BrainTap. BrainTap also comes with a headgear. A lot of people have downloaded BrainTap to really understand how their mind works or what it's doing.
Yeah, we have 120,000 users, and what they do is we're going to talk a little bit about brain fitness, we call it, because it's not just meditation. When you get into a state of meditation, you're entering into a brainwave state called alpha, hopefully, maybe even dipping into theta at sometimes. So think of entrainment. When we talk about brainwave entrainment, you're always in training all the time. And what we'll get into a little bit is that our biological system is actually designed for enlightenment. That might surprise some people. It's not designed for the world we live in. Our brain that we have today is not designed for the activities we're participating in. We're designed to be out in nature, walking barefoot, walking around nature, actually expressing ourselves in more creative ways and relaxing, not the stress that we're under, and we'll go into that. So we developed the product actually back in 1986. I was the first person to ever bring brainwave entrainment to the market. Now there's quite a few different people doing it through different things like PEMF and different things. We use light therapy, we use sound therapy, and we use frequencies, and we'll get deeper into those as we talk. But our body is actually a frequency generator. So just for the listeners to know, our NIH back in 1994 actually said that we all have a biosphere, which means we have a field of energy that surrounds us. It's electrical, it's magnetic, and it's pulsing information and energy. And this is being drawn literally from the light of the universe. So I'll talk a little bit about that and help people understand you are connected. You are not disconnected. Disconnected, you might call it sin or whatever, because when you're disconnected from source, we don't think right, we don't sleep right, we don't perform right. But when we're connected, or what people like to call the flow state, that's a state of what we call brainwave optimization or harmony. So we can get the muscles, ligaments, tendons, the bones, everything we're doing as a biological being. But we're not biological. We are electrical. And what the NIH says is that all illness starts in this field. So when you think about it, this energy medicine that people are doing now today, or they might do Reiki or massage or some way to get the body to release the pent up tension, it all starts in the brain. If you don't change your brain, I don't care what nutrition you take, I don't care what activity you're part in, we've got to calm down the brain. And we'll get into a little bit about that, how it all works in really a symphony of activities, not just one activity, it's everything. And it all starts with what we call mirror neurons. As we're talking here, Simon, you and I are seeing each other because our brain is actually interpreting the frequencies from the screen, and it's taking and making images in our brains. You don't exist out there for me. You exist inside me, and I exist inside you, and this is happening to every person. So it starts to sound a little metaphysical, and people start to get a little weird about that. But the reality is that neuroscience is now sounding more like the ancient Vedas than it does the everyday talk. Scientists used to have one way of thinking, but now we have the quantum field, and we could talk about quantum mathematics and quantum theory. And we'll get into some of that today and let you know that you are a quantum light generator. Just know that you emit, transmit, and receive light energy all the time. And that's what's instructing us right now. That's what's telling me what to say. It's telling you what to hear. And this all starts with the field. So when you think about, I just developed technology that is based on ancient traditions. I mean, people have been doing this since the dawn of history. Nobody invented anything, like they say, nobody invents anything. We just rediscover it and find a new way to package it. And we have a mental health problem out there today, right? People say I say we don't have a mental health crisis. What we have is a physiological crisis. Our biology is being stressed out to the max.
Mhm.
People focus on negative emotions and worry. And there's one thing in common, Simon. Do you know what's present in every negative state?
What?
Lack of breath. If you think of fear, anxiety, anger, they're not breathing. You know, if you've ever seen a little child come up to you and they're angry and you say, just breathe, and they won't breathe because they know as soon as they breathe, anger leaves. So the whole secret here is to work with life. And I always tell people, if you're the type of person, and this is the difference between a pessimist and an optimist, a pessimist looks at the world as if the world is happening to them, but an optimist looks at the world as if the world is happening through them. You are creating it by the thoughts you think, the food you eat, the people you hang out with. And I'm going to get deeper into that a little bit later so people understand that this is not, I don't want anybody to believe what I'm saying. This isn't belief. You can use that on Sunday morning. We're going to talk about science. This is all proven in science.
Well,
So
you know,
everything we're talking
Patrick,
about-
you mentioned breathing, and it's so interesting because every time, you know, I've noticed this with my younger kids, is if they're doing something they're uncomfortable with, whether it's sports or an event, all of a sudden they forget how to breathe in that quick moment. And I'm like, just breathe. And as soon as they breathe, it's almost like they reset, their mind resets, and they're able to tackle any type of project or stress that's ahead or in front of them.
Yeah. One of the amazing things that they proved during COVID, they did a study where they looked at people who are pessimists and optimists. And they found out that, and they were measuring mitochondrial health. So this is energy in the body. And the mitochondria is what provides ATP, the currency for healing and health and vitality and restoration in the body. And what they found out was those people that looked at COVID as a threat actually produced 200 times less light energy at the cellular level.
Oh, wow.
And when we talk today, we're talking about energy. Almost everybody will tell you if you have something that makes you feel good, and that's why, you know, when you think about your friends, your family, we all know that person in our family that's a drainer, right? You're at the holidays and they walk in the room and you go, the room gets a little darker. And when they leave, people go, oh man, I'm so glad they just drain me. You know, that's because there are really energy vampires. They come and they bring down the room. You're like Debbie Downer, you know. You want to be that energizer. You want to be the person that stimulates the room, that energizes the room, that comes with the optimistic attitude. Imagine as an optimist, you produce 200 times more energy. That means that field, you're flushing that field. On a physiological level, though, what's happening is when you're in fear, you're in a sympathetic drive. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. So when you think about fight or flight, your body has to react. Because what happens when you're in fight or flight, your brain doesn't know the difference between a lion chasing you or if you get a text message. So the body responds. And then there's a cascade of things that happens in the body. And the main thing that we do, like with BrainTap, is we teach you to regulate that. Because instantly, as soon as you have a stress response, your body goes to work, getting you the hell out of there. You know, it has something. First, we freeze. One of the biggest things I teach people is pause, break, and breathe before you make a decision. If you just do that, you're going to engage the nervous system and you're going to turn on something called the parasympathetic system. This is your rest, digest, and recovery system. Now, what this does is it opens up a field of energy. They've actually measured this. This is not, it's like I said, it's not metaphysical. Your body produces more energy. Now, you need more energy when you're in that situation, not less. But think about your amygdala. This is a part of the brain that gets hijacked under stress. It actually stops blood flow to your frontal cortex. This part of the brain actually is your reasoning power. It makes good decisions. That's why if you've ever been in an argument and after the argument, you go, man, I wish I could go back and just not say that thing or not do that thing. Well, you get hijacked. Everybody gets hijacked. And so, you know, when Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get hit, you know, everybody's going to get hit. Everybody listening to this podcast, at some point in your life, you're going to have a stressful event. You're going to have a reaction to that stressful event. And sometimes you're going to like it. You performed excellent. But most of the time, unfortunately, if you haven't planned for it, one of my favorite sayings, I've written 10 books. I have a new book coming out on October 21st called Brain Fitness Blueprint. But my first book was called Awaken the Genius. And I believe that if you stay in that threat zone, that fear zone, and the average person looks at their cell phone 300 times a day. So if you're an optimist, that might be okay. You know, you're cool, you know, get it, you know, every once in a while you're shocked with a negative text. But if you're a negative person, every time you get that ping, every time you look at your phone, now your liver then pumps into the bloodstream 25 grams of sugar called glucagon. Now, this does something really bad for our nervous system. First of all, it puts us on high alert. But then that sugar, your bloodstream can only have 1 tablespoon of circulating sugar. The sugar did not go through the digestive tract. It went directly into the bloodstream. Now, if you have more than 1 tablespoon, you have to start producing insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens is now all that energy you needed, whatever you need to get the hell out of there, you've got. You can run away from that bear. You can run away from the lion. But let's say you're just sitting there in your car. You're sitting on the phone. Whatever you're doing, you're not moving. Well, there's no place for that energy to go because the muscles are already full of energy. So it's going, what do I do with this? And then you start shaking and quaking in that nervous energy. Pretty soon, your brain starts to think that's normal. We have to break that pattern.
Does it accept, like it becomes a pattern, or is it?
Yes. Yeah, your brain starts to think when, like, if I used to use there used to be a commercial that said, how do you spell relief? You'd say, oh, ROLAIDS. Well, they did a study in New York City when that commercial was really popular. 7th graders, actually 93% of them spelled relief, ROLAIDS. And so, and still remember the study, the number of them, the teacher says, what do you mean? This is what it is. I've learned this. And they said, no, it's because when you say relief and you saw that commercial, you triggered ROLAIDS. That's not how you spell relief, right? So everything's like that. Like we all have triggers. This is what people like.
This kind of brings me up to, I had someone else on the podcast where they talked about Russian subversion, which was a KGB tactic used by the Russians, where they said you could teach someone that the color red is green and they're going to fight you to the death, and later on.
Right.
So that's kind of reminds me of that commercial that you just mentioned.
Yeah. But like tell people, when you meet people, like when you're trying to improve your health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, you're going to get resistance because everybody wants everything to be the same. So somebody's going to trigger you, or they're going to say, that's craziness. That's not true. But there's only one truth. It's your truth. And
let me ask you, Patrick. So you mentioned negative people. All of us have negative people around us, family as well. Holidays are coming up. You got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you got Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. God bless you. But how do you avoid these people, or what do you do in these situations?
Yeah, what I tell people is you can't avoid this. Stress is going to happen. And you and I right now sitting here, we're the genetic inheritance of a bunch of paranoid people. Our parents, their parents, their parents, all the way back through time. And what they prove now, if I could take, Simon, your DNA, I could staple it to the floor where you're sitting, it would stretch to Pluto.
Wow.
Okay, so this DNA is a viscous substance. It's inside you right now, folded around every cell, every system, every organ. And they now know in science that energy is actually pulling in energy in the form of light codes, and it projects into your body and tells you what to do. Now, in 2003, you remember they mapped the human genome. Everybody got excited. Hey, we can do this. And then they found out we can't really do shit because we only know 1% of it. Wow. And they said that 99% was junk. Well, in 2018, they discovered technology that showed us that every DNA pair, which means, Simon, since the minute we started talking, it's actually since the moment you were born, every DNA pair in your body is changing at roughly every 40 seconds. You are changing. Now, the first filter is, are you a pessimist or an optimist? Okay, so that means they've proven that when you're an optimist, you upregulate your nervous system and you face life as a challenge. When you're a pessimist, you downregulate. You literally handicap yourself, become negative. So what you do when you're around people is you build your energy. You're prepared for that. And you basically have to look at people and say, they're doing the best they can with the information they have. It's not my job to change them. It's not my job to educate them. Now, if they ask, I'm going to tell them. But when you're in a family situation, nobody wants you to change them. But what you do is you just express yourself, you breathe through it. And I always tell people, when that negative person's talking, imagine the window's open and wind's coming through the window, and that's what they're saying. Nothing sticks.
I love that.
You're like Teflon. It just slides off you. Even if they're trying to, and my kids, it was really funny because I always taught them when they were growing up, because my dad had a different strategy. When he got help with alcoholism, he didn't send us to our room to think about what we did. This is probably the worst thing a parent can do. Because now you're anchoring in that negative experience, and that becomes like a crystal to a radio station that we transmit and broadcast. What my dad did is he would send us to our room with a book like As a Man Thinketh or Power Positive Thinking, because my dad was an alcoholic and he got help through the Stillville method, which he became an instructor. I grew up doing this. So when I have to go to my room, I'd have to read a chapter of that book, And then I have to come out to him or my mother, whoever it was, and I'd have to tell them how I was going to apply that knowledge and change the situation.
I love that. Are you kidding? I'm going to use that for my kids.
Yeah.
My mother was an alcoholic, so I know all about it.
Yeah.
That is so positive. So instead of sending them to the room as punishment, which can further make them kind of a pessimist in this case, and lower their energy levels and into a negative or a red zone, I'll call it. You probably have a better term for it. And you're rebuilding it with positivity and then applying that to this negative situation to pass this through, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah. When people, you probably heard the expression, there's only one moment in time. It's now. The past is a bunch of memories. And every time you go get those memories, you're distorting them. You're deleting them, changing them, restoring them. So what my dad found out was, and I do it to this day, is instead of taking that negative memory and dwelling on it, what's my lesson to be learned? Because it was my thinking that put me there. Your best thinking brought you here. So that was their best activity. Now, we have to change at the moment of that explosion because we only remember the very high times and the very low times. And if we focus on the very high times, we start to forget those negative times. But if we focus on the negative times, we forget the positive times. So that's why it's so important that we manage our memories and realize that it's not what's happening to us, it's what's happening through us. How are we thinking about it? So in every interaction, so when I'm there, and we have a brother like that, and luckily none of our family has alcohol problems, but there's still, when we're born, when you have your little child there, you realize at 2 years old, they got a personality, they know what they're doing. Well, they got that from their genetic inheritance. When the Hopi Indians actually, this is an ancient folklore, they said that 7 generations are influencing them. Their ancestors are guiding them, directing them, right?
That's crazy.
They now know, epigenetic scientists know, that 7 generations of our family is influencing you right now. So whose memories are you really doing? Think of it, it's just information. When mom and dad got together and that one sperm won the race. I mean, there's a lot of stress there. And then it had to break through the egg. Then it started to duplicate that information.
It wasn't a walk in the park.
Yes, yeah. It's been a battle since the very beginning. You get in this race, you look around and go, it's not just one person you're racing against, you're racing against a billion, so now you're racing and you won that race.
The most important race of your life.
Yes, yeah. So you win this race. It's a transference of information and energy on a chemical level, biological level, spiritual level, all these things. Now, you have to figure this out. When you were born, Simon, you had 18.1 volts of energy. Okay. This energy, your brain was fully connected. I like to tell people, the smartest you've ever been was the moment you were born. Because all your neurons were connected. You learned a language without going to school. You learned to lose the muscles, ligaments, tendons. You learned to use your body without anybody telling you or instructing you. It all came within you. There is a power so great within us that it scares us. So, but when you accept that power, that resource, and it shows up when we need it most, or we can deny it when we need it most. So the whole thing about the brain is, how do we open up the brain frequencies? Now think of these frequencies, and we'll talk a little bit about that because people are probably wondering, how does this have to do with brainwave entrainment? We have all this energy in our brain, and it's creating fields of energy. Now we can measure this with EEG. Where we're talking right now, hopefully we got a great deal of beta going, some alpha going. Maybe we'll dip into these other. All brainwaves are happening at the same time. But think of it like Wi-Fi networks. When you open up your phone in a neighborhood, you got 10 Wi-Fis. If you don't have the codes, you don't get in. Our biological system unlocks the code by our physiology. That's why breathing is so important. So in the morning, we need to open up those codes to get more what we call SMR brainwaves. We call it digital coffee. So if anyone listening gets up in the morning, the first thing they do is have a cup of coffee. That's the worst thing you can do for your nervous system.
Oh, wow.
Because you just slept all night long. Now, 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. We'll get more into that maybe later. But if you slept well, you should wake up with a lot of dopamine, cortisol, norepinephrine. You have your own chemical cocktail, more than a cup of coffee, a lot more. And you have something called the cortisol trough. Cortisol is what drives behavior, through emotion. And so you have this high cortisol trough. If you have a cup of coffee, you crushed it. Wow. Now you're using a biological substance. Now I love coffee, but I'm going to have one. I'll probably have one after this podcast because it's after 10 o'clock. As long as it's after 10 o'clock, now your body can regulate. You've let your body's own neurochemistry work. Now what happens is throughout the day, during sleep, what your brain did is it built up your neurotransmitter bank account. These neurotransmitters, at the end of every cell, you need these chemical, basically think of them like there's glia cells and there's all these other things, but think of these neurotransmitters as this is the messenger. It's like the email, it's like the text messages, but it's telling one cell what to do to the other. Now that message, the stronger that message is, the stronger you're compelled to do it. Now, if you don't have that neurotransmitter, the body will have to make up something else. So during the day, you're going to use those up to go through different things. Now, to give you an idea, when you're in beta, you produce a lot of dopamine. Dopamine is the reason we have all of our addictions, because dopamine is an adjutant, but it never pays you off. When you think about somebody with an addiction, they're always doing it. They're always doing it. There's no payoff. So you have to go, it's a flow, it's a cyclic system. So you have this adjutant, it tells you what to do. Now we got to modulate that with alpha. Alpha creates acetylcholine, a little bit of norepinephrine, there's 54 neurotransmitters, we're not going to go through all of them. But then you start to feel good. So in the morning, you have this hopefully balanced energy, you're doing your thing. By 2:00 in the afternoon, wherever you're at in the world. Now, this is what surprises people. Everywhere in the world, wherever you're at 2:00 in the afternoon, your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees.
Oh, wow. Okay.
How does your body know to do that? It knows to do that because the sun, they call it the circadian rhythm. Our sun is literally beaming codes of information to our body. Our body then interprets that. And to give you an idea, if you're not in bed by 10 o'clock, you're not making as much melatonin. If you're not in bed at 11 o'clock, you're not cleaning your liver. So this is all set to our body. And we can biohack, right? We can use technology.
And it doesn't matter if you sleep longer because of the way the sun positions.
Right. Yeah. In fact, when we did our sleep study in Australia with coal miners, because everybody said, light affects you when you sleep. Yeah, it does. It tells you to go to sleep. There's more green light at night than more blue light in the morning. But there's all this spectrum of light coming all the time. But at night, when you're sleeping, it's not about how much time you're in bed. We did these coal miners, we did a 2-week study before we started the study because we wanted to know where their brain was at, what their sleeping patterns were. The average coal miner was in bed 10 hours a night, but they only received 1 minute of deep sleep, virtually no REM. These are the 2 brainwave states during sleep that you need. If you can get 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep, you will crush any biological metric like a Ring or Oura Watch or Whoop, whatever technology you're using, an Apple Watch. You will see that's why we improve sleep so much, is because we're going to drop them into deep delta at night. That's when your brain does something. Now imagine this for a minute. You're in physiology class in 2014. They teach you that the lymphatic system is the garbage man of the system. So there's only 3 reasons somebody has problems with any part of their body or their brain: thoughts, traumas, or toxins. So we already talked about the thoughts a little bit. There's trauma. We have to deal with that. There's ways to deal with that. But the toxins are the biggest thing we have right now. Toxic thoughts, toxic food, toxic environments. Now, our brain is protected. It has a blood-brain barrier. Remember, the lymph system stopped at the neck. So you're in 2014. There's no lymph system in the brain. This is impossible. It's physiologically impossible. Everywhere there's a blood vessel, there has to be a lymph vessel. But they didn't know it was there. But imagine, like an X-Man, during a sleep study, a scientist actually found out that we have a system of the brain that's called the glial lymphatic system. This part of the brain only opens up. So imagine we have a power in our body, within us, that they didn't even know about before 2015. But in 2015, they found out this is why sleep is important. It used to be everybody to brag. I only get 4 hours sleep. I only get 6 hours sleep. It's not about the time you're in bed. It's about getting 1 hour of deep sleep to detoxify the brain, 2 hours of REM sleep to reorganize your memories, to prepare yourself for the day. The other is basically just to restore the body, restoration. But if you don't get these other things happening, you could be in bed like these coal miners for 10 hours. Now, when we used BrainTap, we did 2 different ways in that study. We use just our app because we have those 120,000 users all don't have the headset. I wish they did, but they don't. The headset's not that expensive, but it is an expense. So you have to figure it out. So what we did in 3 weeks, every one of those people in the study were now sleeping 70% better than everyone else in the world.
Oh, wow. And
now the people using the app alone, it took them 6 weeks. Because sound is powerful, and there's a lot of sound healing and things that people do.
So does the app, sorry, Patrick, to interrupt, does the app play frequencies and sound? Okay. Yeah. So like
we have over
3,000
different sessions. Yeah. We have all those. We have a whole package of solfeggio frequencies, 𝐏𝐸 frequencies, right frequencies, but we also use words. So one thing that most people don't realize is we have a tape loop that plays every day, and they say it's about 60,000 words. 80% of those are negative because we inherited those. That's why we're alive. We're paranoid. Our ancestors were paranoid. They didn't fall off the cliff. They didn't get eaten by the lion. They didn't do those. They weren't the first guy in the battle. You know what I mean? They
were skeptical.
Yes, the skeptical people. So nowadays we don't need all that protection, right? We live in homes. We have lights. We have grocery stores on every corner. We have flowing water. Most people don't realize just a few hundred years ago, most of the things we take for granted, you had to be royalty to get them.
Yeah.
Imagine if you wanted to listen to the symphony. Yeah, 200 years ago, if you wanted to listen to the symphony, you had to assemble the whole group. They'd come in and only a few people got to listen. We could take out our cell phones today. We can listen to virtually anything we want. We can use memory that can harmonize our cells, heal us, and make us, get more out of life. Or we can listen to destructive music that disorganizes our brain and causes freer anxiety.
I want to ask about that because now the information is feeding into us so much. And it's affecting our brain. I mean, you've mentioned 300 times picking up and looking at your iPhone. And if you're a pessimist, it's going to be a negative downward spiral. If you're an optimist, maybe you pick up some good news and you're happy, you're ready for the weekend. Right. What is that doing to our brain? Is it frying it? I mean, when
we measure, to give you an example, I let my grandkids play computer games, but only for 1 hour. Then they have to do a BrainTap session to reorganize it because they're stressing out the brain. If you look at somebody's brain playing, I'm not talking, there are some good computer games. I'm talking about the ones that are
Call of Duty or something.
Yeah. And what happens is their brain looks like they're on crack cocaine. It's disorganizing because we're getting so much information and the brain has to react to it. And of course, dopamine is being hit because of all the colors and bells and all the sounds. Everything's triggering dopamine.
The crazy sounds. And I'm noticing even in cartoons, when I was younger watching cartoons, it was kind of more basic, slower. Now it's bells and whistles and quick scene changes. And sometimes I watch my son watching cartoons. I'm like, we can't watch this. I'm getting exhausted watching it.
Right. I actually, when my grandkids were born, I'd tell my son, we're going to pick up the kids this morning. Please, no TV. That TV is actually a 60 hertz frequency, which is 10 hertz, which is alpha. So they're putting you're in trance. So you have discretionary access to the subconscious. Now you're being programmed. When I was a kid, all the cartoons had classical music behind them. If you listen, if you go back and watch, like, even when it was negative, like, the Roadrunner, doing things like that, they still had, and so they're using, I don't know what the reason is, but it's an adjutant. And then, of course, they deliver a commercial. Yeah. And if you look at the commercials today in cartoons, most of them have what we call the nag factor. They are always showing a kid telling their parents what to do.
Interesting.
So they're instructing the kids to bug the parents to get the junk that's going to destroy their brain and body. And then the parents, of course, they're wore down, they're tired, they don't want to, I'm going to get these Swedish fish or these, just total. The worst thing you can do for your brain as far as food goes is sugar. Sugar is a neurotoxin. And you have children, so you know this. So you go to a birthday party, all the kids are acting really good. They break out the cake and the Kool-Aid or whatever. All of a sudden you got a bunch of spazzes, And this is really how my family got into this. My mother went to a iridologist, which is a nutritionalist, and she said, you got to get your kids off the dyes and sugar. We went from being spazzes that were always in trouble. I was held back in second grade. It wasn't because I was smart. It was because I was chemically dependent upon sugar.
You're chemically imbalanced.
Yeah. As soon as I got off the sugar and started eating healthy, I became an honor roll student and became really good at sports and things because my body was working with my environment instead of my body working against my environment.
Is there any link with sugar and, like, let's say a pessimist or an optimist?
Well, yes. Think of it this way. Frequency. You've heard this term before. It's what you frequently see. Mm-hmm. So frequency. So if you are a low frequency person, you're going to see low frequency people, low frequency food, low frequency activities. But if you're high frequency, you're going to seek out high frequency activities, high frequency food, high frequency things. So we need to change our frequency because it is exactly, you can go to the grocery store and shop in the healthy part department, but they also have everything you can do to destroy your body. And then they put it right there when you're leaving. You have all that sugar. They're just bombarding you. And then they're conditioning you with showing you commercials that show somebody who's angry and upset, and all of a sudden they have a candy bar and they're normalized. This is totally the opposite of what happens. You might get that little high. They call it the sugar blues. You get this high for sugar, but then you drop down. Now you're chasing the cortisol. You're chasing the norepinephrine. You're chasing the dopamine. And the body doesn't work well with I mean, we're designed, like I said, our brain is not designed for our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Our brain is literally designed to be in the Serengeti. That's where the genetic inheritance comes.
In nature.
What happens at 2 o'clock in the Serengeti? Nothing.
Oh.
It's hot. The lion's sleeping, the zebra's sleeping. Nobody's running around doing anything. So we're designed literally to take a nap in the middle of the day. Now,
That's why the 2 o'clock works everywhere in the world.
Yes, right.
From our ancestors.
Yes. So that's why we designed, like we did a study with Google and Microsoft with Julia Arndt. It's actually a TED Talk. It's a study we did for performance. And she came to me, she was doing this study with Google and Microsoft. They said, how can we help these people? They're getting burnout. Like a lot of people have burnout out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're when they say burning the candle at both ends, what they're talking about is they're just burning up their brain at both ends. They have a lot of inflammation. And we've measured this I've measured 30,000 brains, and most every person has a high degree of delta when they're awake. This is a sign of inflammation. Mm-hmm. So this inflammation is causing a disruption, and it's some other things too that we might get into. But the reality is that what I told her, I said, Julia, all you need to do, convince them to do one brain tap session at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to change their life. And so we go to the programmers. These are people that are hard workers. They get paid by every keystroke. We can measure those keystrokes. We know what they're doing. And they said, we can't take 20 minutes off. We're busy. We're doing work. We can't do that. So what are they doing? They're drinking sodas that have caffeine, energy drinks that are burning out their brain, sugar that's stimulating them. They're actually working against their brain. I said, just have salt water, get some Celtic salt, put it in your water, because we're a battery. Remember when you were born 18.1 volts? By the time you're 21, that's 10.1 volts. Mm-hmm. If that voltage in your brain drops below 7, you're going to have dementia-like symptoms. If that brain drops below 4, you're going to have Alzheimer's. Because the brain, it's like riding a bike. If you don't have enough power, your balance goes off, you fall over. You got to keep that right energy. So when we said, I told the programmers, I said, just give us 2 weeks. What can you really do? It's 20 minutes a day. So we're measuring their performance. What we found out was they got 26% more work done when they took a 20-minute break in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. I told them, you got a day and a quarter more work done by taking a 20-minute break.
Yeah, it's kind of, it almost goes back to the whole sleep thing too. You could be at work for 10 hours, but you could really be effective if you do it properly. Not just saying organization, but giving yourself time to readjust or reset.
Right. And what we found was their sleep score actually went up 64%. We didn't do anything for sleep.
Oh, well, because they rested during the work day as well.
Yeah. Think of your body. Your body is like electric. It is electrical circuitry, but it's biological. Mm-hmm. So it's holding a charge in electronics. I went to school first for electronics. When somebody says, how does a PhD create this piece of equipment? Well, I went to school first for electronics, and my dad was a Silva instructor. So I grew up taking people through these kind of seminars and things like that. So I was trying to look for a way, how can I get people to do this without much effort? In fact, zero effort. You have play, you go to sleep, you wake up, your brain's working. That's the way it works. And so what happened was in this training process, we wanted to figure it out. So we looked at candles. People sometimes will light candles, they relax. Mm-hmm. Well, what's going on? Have you ever been to a bonfire and you're looking at the bonfire, you go, man, I'm mesmerized. I can't take my eyes off the fire. It's just crackling and burning.
Yeah, almost like a transic state.
Yes, okay. It is a trance state because that fire is burning at 10 hertz frequency. Your mirror neurons are matching that frequency. That's what they do. Now, the fire also, even a candle, will emit infrared light. Our cells need infrared light. When that light hits this is what we do with BrainTap, why we use light. When that light hits our skin, every cell of our body has something called a chromophore. Think of it as a little battery that's looking to charge. Most people think we get energy from food. That's not true. If you have an HRV, just eat a meal and look at your HRV. It's going to go down. It costs you energy. That's why sharks don't eat humans. They take one bite. We don't have enough fat for them. So they spit them out. Very rarely does somebody get eaten
because
by
the
a shark.
Digestion part of it is burning. It's taking the energy away.
Right. That's happening to us. But what happens when you introduce light therapy, the right frequencies of light therapy, your hemoglobin absorbs that light energy and circulates it through the bloodstream. We put it through the eyes and the ears because it goes directly into the brain. So, but you can do it all over the body when you have illness or stress or anxiety or you're just trying to recover. A lot of people use red light therapy for that. Mm-hmm. But how it works is, think in the middle of the cell, you have a mitochondria. Now, your eyes have the most mitochondria of any part of the body by square centimeter. Your eyes are literally absorbing light energy and transmitting light energy. Like a dolphin that has sonar, we use light energy. So this light is bouncing off. That's why I see the screen. I see the lights. I see the room I'm in. because these photons are bouncing back and forth, and my brain is interpreting them. Now, in our cells, the brain has the most mitochondria by an organ. They could have 200 mitochondria in one cell. But that mitochondria's job is to absorb this energy and transmit it out to the body. And it produces something called ATP. And there's a lot more that goes into it, cellular metabolism, but they call it the Krebs cycle. So imagine this cycle. There's a little guy in the middle of your cell, in the middle of the mitochondria, and it's like a clock. Every time it goes around, it spits out one ATP molecule. Mm-hmm. When you introduce light therapy, they have measured 32 times more energy being produced at the cellular level.
Wow.
So to give you
that
an example,
includes and that's why I say infrared saunas are so popular. And
I do them every morning. I do infrared every morning. I do PMF every morning. I do my BrainTap. I have a 2-hour ritual because I can. But most people don't have that much time, but you do these things. And so when you think about what's happening in the body, we need to prepare ourselves for the day. So I do infrared every morning. I have an infrared sauna here. I have 2 big infrared saunas at my office. I have a 6,000 square foot research facility, but I have a lot of people come to my house and they go, wow, you should just have the doctors do everything that's in your family room. Because, I'm 64 years old and I plan to be around a long time, and I'm playing with my grandkids. I'm not going to be in a rocking chair. And these bodies are not designed to age like we think. In fact, I wrote an article about the chicken cells they kept alive for 35 years at Harvard, because if you feed them right, you detoxify them, give them light energy, the cells are meant to produce. So infrared light comes into the body, it accepts that light energy and recharges the cells. So think of like a battery or your cell phone. When it's dead, you can talk to it all you want, but it's not going to do anything till you plug it in. So think of light energy like you're plugging into the source. Now, breath can do it too. So like in the morning, you can do what we call a psychological breath, which is a deep breath in, you go, but you do it for like 20 minutes, you'll reset your nervous system. Because a lot of people don't wake up until they're adequately stressed. They lay in bed and they catastrophize, they get fearful. You want to change that. It's just like changing the television. You want to change the channel. Now in the middle of the day, you can do like a box breath to do this. Breathe into the count of 4, hold the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4. Now, the reason that we created BrainTap was most people don't want to do that. They just want a technology, and it has to be scalable. We have problems in the world right now. We can scale this across the world if enough people start doing it. And the neat thing is, MIT just 3 weeks ago, by the way, came out with a study that showed your brain's frequencies, what your broadcast, like a radio station, extends 10,000 miles from you.
Wow. Your
brain and your body is producing a field of information. So when you change, like when you become calm or you become relaxed, you become an example. So when you're talking about earlier, how do you handle those people in the family? You might find that when you go in there because everything is syncing. Have you ever seen, if you go to YouTube, you go on there and there's one called Synchronizing Metronomes. This guy starts 200 metronomes all at different times. Within 3 minutes, every metronome is synchronized.
Oh, wow.
This happens with grandfather clocks too. They can't explain why it happens, but we live in a synchronistic universe. Now our cells do the same thing. We do it with people. You meet up somebody, you go, we just click, we just vibe, they have a good vibe. And then there's other people that go, man, I just don't understand them. I get a bad vibe with them.
It's like two magnets.
We're trying to synchronize like those metronomes. So in that family, the family's all having a good time, everything. And then what they call in physics, they call it a strange attractor. This negative person comes in. All of a sudden, they start sucking all the energy out of the room. But if you're strong enough and your frequencies, you're going to set their metronome. You're going to change their frequencies.
Raise theirs?
Yes. Okay. You can increase theirs. And what will happen is remember frequency, what you frequently see. Now they get a little disoriented. They
don't like it, so they get upset.
They don't like it, so they leave, or they stay and they start to tune into it. That's why, there's a saying, if there's I grew up Catholic, so they always say wherever there's 4 Catholics, there's a 5th. You know what I mean? There's a joke. But the reality is if you have 3 friends that are alcoholics, you're probably going to be the 4th.
Yeah, or drug users.
Or anything. Or thieves. Our community is so important because it's actually feeding us information.
So Patrick, instead of like leveling out, like some people are like, well, I'm so high energy, sometimes I want to hang out with Brenda who's lower energy and she balances me out. That's probably not a good way to balance yourself out.
Well, Jesus hung around
with she's sinners, a pessimist.
Well, Jesus hang around with sinners, right? So the reason you do that is if we're going to change the world, we got to change the frequency. So those people that are high energy, we've got to go get those low energy people. Now, don't be around them too long. You got to know how much can you handle? Because if you're there too much, you'll change your frequency.
And you'll be on their level.
Yeah, you'll start believing their story, which isn't working for them. Why is it going to work for you? You know, that's why my dad didn't get help from AA. And I'm not against AA. If AA is helping you, go for it. But the number one law of psychology says you can't be a behavior. So why would I go to a meeting every night that tells me I'm an alcoholic?
Where it's going to drag you down and the frequency is so low.
Yeah. Nobody can drink alcohol. If you choose to drink alcohol, you know, hey, I'm going to have a drink or I'm going to have 2 drinks. And some people can handle it, but it's still going to affect you. You're going to get a buzz, right? That buzz is your cells dying and not enough oxygen to the brain and sugar content. You know, but some people like that feeling. If you can handle it and it doesn't cause you problems, then great. But nobody can do it. They took race car drivers. These are professional Formula One drivers. They had them all drink a 6-pack of beer and they had them get on the track. None of them performed anywhere near their capacity. You know what I mean? So that tells me that even these high energy, high efficient athletes cannot handle alcohol. So
and they should not. How long does it take for alcohol to bypass your system to get your energy or your
you get hijacked right away, because the body, your brain is always looking for sugar, but it's looking for ketones. Not gluten, not the sugar we get from alcohol or candy or foods. So there's 2 phases to digestion, but the brain will use whatever it has. It's kind of like if all I can afford is junk food, which is a problem today, you know, low income families will go get low income food. You know, they need the high income food, so they're not low income people. You know, but the problem is they won't invest in the food. And I always say you can't outthink a bad diet. So you've got to eat it well enough that you don't get you know, somebody eats the bad food and then they go, I can't believe it. You know, what do you mean you can't believe it? You just ate the thing and then now here you are. You know, so success leads.
So now I get why the BrainTap has the goggles or the eye part. And fun fact for you, and I wish I stuck it through. I was one of the first importers of infrared saunas called longevity saunas, maybe 25 years ago, before Costco had them or anything. I just couldn't ship them. I probably would have been a big time millionaire.
Yeah, one of my best friends is Momentum Health, and he was just at a conference with us, and he sells 13, 20 of these saunas at every show because people realize that we're like a battery, and infrared saunas charge us, and they detoxify us. You know, so the cells need to express, like we think breathing just happens in our lungs, but actually every cell is respirating. It's breathing, it's pulsing. In our brain, the reason that when we sleep, we have just to kind of keep with that theme, when you're sleeping, if you're relaxed, your skull's relaxed, we have sutures in our skull. It's not a solid skull. There's suture points, and the brain is designed to breathe. As it breathes, it brings up spinal fluid that washes over our brain. And then there's a part of there's inside our brain, we have what we call glia cells. So imagine you're at a party. Every person at the party is like a glia cell. It's going around shaking hands, doing everything. At the end of the night, you want to wash your hands, right? Because you've touched everybody's hands. Well, at the end of the day, we need to wash off these glia cells because all the receptor sites are full of everything you did today. Now, all inside your metabolism has toxins, so that it flushes over it, but it only does it in small bursts. That's why you need the cycle of sleep, and then it washes over them. What saunas do is they start that process. You don't have to go to sleep to do that.
Sweating it out.
You're sweating it out. And your biggest elimination organ isn't when you go to the bathroom. It's your skin. You know, if you can get that out, and so we're big believers.
Is that why
especially for TBIs.
Is that why it's also good to be in the sun sometimes?
Oh yes,
because it's kind of
like you can get out in the sun. The problem is they're putting a bunch of stuff in the air that they've admitted is like aluminum and all these. They're reflecting the light. They're reflecting the light codes. If you imagine that, they're reflecting our communication with the universe, because that DNA I told you about, they know we're pulling in information from the solar system, from our galaxy, from the universe. It's telling you, instructing you what to do. It's happening every second of every minute of every hour of every day. And now that's what, when you say, I love it in the Bible where he says, I'm at the door knocking, you just have to open it. That's the same thing with this information. So if you think that information in the ancient rishis would say, all the information you need to know is in the next breath.
Wow, I love it. You know, and just to add to what we were talking about, and you mentioned the open window theory. If you're around a pessimist with low energy, don't hang around them too much, or you're going to be brought down to their level, and then you're in trouble. There's another podcast I had where a woman also that does kind of energy healing, so to speak. She mentioned a bubble. So in a room, she creates this bubble, and people just whatever they say kind of goes up and over their dome or this bubble dome, and it was kind of an interesting topic. But I do want to get more into frequencies. This has been something I've personally been using at night, turning it on, not with an app, which I'm going to check out BrainTap as well, but just off like Apple playlists or so forth. Yeah. They're not always good. They're not probably the best or suitable, but I notice it puts me to sleep. How important are these frequency hertz, and what are some of the more popular ones and why?
Sure. Well, if you came to my bedroom, I have a little generator there called a Schumann generator. It's like I'm sleeping on a mountaintop. 7.8 hertz frequency. It generates it into the room. If you walk into my, it's just calm. Now, why we know that does that is our body, remember those mirror neurons? So when somebody says, hey, I had a mountaintop experience, they activated a brainwave frequency called theta, or maybe even gamma. And the important thing about that is that your body then starts to produce something called GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter. It's a precursor to DMT. So when people are doing these DMTs, they're going on these psychedelic trips, what they're really doing is they're causing DMT to rush into your body. Now, DMT is in every cell of your body right now. It's just not unlocked. You need GABA to unlock it. So if you want to have that joy, that kind of mystical experience, we need that every night. We need to escape from this. This is a stressful place. It doesn't always go our way. People aren't cheering for us. Some people actually want us to fail. And that bubble that she's talking about, you have that bubble. The problem is most people have never activated that bubble. NIH, our scientists actually prove we have that bubble. So it's not a metaphysical thing. They're not just thinking themselves out. It's a physiological property of our component of our biological system
that we need to implement using our brain. Let me ask you, Patrick, that music generator, sound generator, what is it called?
I'd have to look it up for you, but I was at a conference once, and I use, you've probably seen tuning forks, right? Where you can tune to different frequencies. And what I show people is let's say I put a 528 one here. I'm not touching it. I hit this one, it starts vibrating. If I'm in enough proximity, this one starts vibrating.
Interesting.
That's you and they're your friend.
Yeah.
That's why if you're walking through the mall and you see a friend and they're coming at you, the closer they get, the more joy you have, the more happiness, you start smiling, you give them a big hug. But if you see that negative person, you're looking around, you're ducking into a store, and then when they walk by, you walk out and you go, oh, I escaped that one. Because so our body will start doing these things.
Are two negative people also that are walking by the mall with bad frequencies or bad energies, are they also avoiding each other, or do they cling?
Oh, no. Like attracts like, unfortunately.
Like attracts like, yeah.
So that's why it's so important. Like when people ask me, I have a mentor. I have a couple of them I talk with because I don't know everything. And there's people out there doing things that I want to learn. I want to find somebody of a higher frequency that I can hang out with because I want to learn from them. I want to develop what they have because if I do what they've done, I can get what they've got. Yeah. I can't get what they've got if I don't do what they've done and read what they've done, do the studies. A lot of people, we live in a fast food economy, right? We think we paid the money, drive around to the takeout window, and I have a cover that I had made by an artist I use in my talk sometimes. It's 2 scoops to instant enlightenment. Instant Buddha. All you do is take 2 scoops in the morning, drink it down. Now you're Buddha. That doesn't happen, right? We have to. There's nothing happens without the work. Like even the Bible says, faith without works is dead. So you can have the visualization, you can have the imagination, but if you don't do anything about it, if you don't activate it, then really the neurons, Hebb's law says those neurons that fire together wire together. So you're not firing and wiring together. It's just a thought. Thoughts are wind, as they say. But if you take action, that's where the power is. And then also Hebb's law says those neurons that don't fire together unwire. So those negative patterns of behaviors, if you don't give them energy, like that person, I don't give that person any energy, they don't get the energy. But if I go, we got to fix them, we got to have an intervention. Now that's maybe a different story. If you get maybe 9 positive people, you get that one person in the room. What they're really doing is they're pushing that person's energy to the point that they've got to make a decision. Because when you're down in the muck and mire, you don't do it.
Do you think for those that are struggling with some type of addiction, you mentioned your father and past alcohol, or we talked a little bit about drugs or just any type of addiction, is that what the true cure is getting their energy past a certain point to heal them versus kind of keeping them at that?
Yes, state? We do a lot of work with the community called Lucid. They have 320,000 people going through addiction and getting off of it. And what we say is that all addiction is isolation. So you need to find a community We in the Blue Zone books, which are very popular, that showed how does longevity work. One of their key components, food is important, of course, sunshine's important, getting out in nature. But the one thing they said, every one of these they have communities. If you can't pick up the phone and you got to, let's say on the highway, you got a flat tire, somebody can help you. You don't have friends, regardless, you have 5,000 friends on Facebook. It doesn't matter. If you don't have a friend you can pick up the phone with and talk to, we all need that connection. Now, it's best if it's in person, but we can do it through the phone. We can do it through text. We can do it through that connection. You probably had the experience most people have where they start thinking about somebody. All of a sudden you get a phone call from them or a text. And you go, wow, I was just thinking about you. Well, you just pinged them in subspace. Because
so cool.
Yeah, so everything is connected. He's on a string. There's nothing that's disconnected. There's nothing wrong with the Russians, nothing wrong with the Chinese. There's nothing. We're all just beings trying to function. Now the problem is, like they say in the Benedictine monk said, "Give me a child till they're 7, and I'll give you a Catholic for life." Because we get formatted. We start thinking that we have all the rules. And when we start thinking we know it all, we have all the rules, we have the life lessons, all those things. And we might for some things, but we have to have an open mind, because in quantum physics, you're in a field of infinite possibility. But as soon as you know the one way to do something, all others collapse. They're no longer available for you to choose. This is called addiction. When you get to the next level, you have a dilemma, because it's either this or that. When you get to 3 or more, now you have choices. That's quantum physics. There's only an infinite number of possibilities from a moment in time. So think about that for a moment. There's only an infinite number of possibilities from any one moment in time. There's not one choice in every situation. That's why we have different religions. We have different people do different things. But the problem is, if somebody thinks they have the one way, and for them to feel better, they've got to go get everybody else to believe their one way. That's the Russians.
Yeah,
that's getting people to see green, but it's really red.
And to your point, so as a CEO, obviously you're CEO of a pretty successful app and product, and as someone that's done keynote speaking and probably coached other CEOs or talked to other people that have roadblocks, how do you get them past to thinking that one way? Is it you have to break the vase and rebuild?
Well, the first thing is to realize that every superhero has a dark night of the soul. I've never seen a superhero movie where they didn't have to struggle and go through their things. But as soon as they get over it, they realize they're over it, that's their kryptonite. They got to put it in the lead box. Like the person said, they put it in the bubble. You got to put it in the lead box and realize it's always going to be there. And that you don't have that. When in Zen Buddhism, they say, wake up every morning with a childlike mind, or what they call, you have this open mind. You might be doing the right things, but maybe there's a better way. And I still remember in India, when I first went there, I do a lot of work with Ames Bhopal. They're probably the world's leader. They're MIT of India. There's 6 of them. And these are the smartest people in India. So I do a demonstration in front of the room. I said, we have a guru here. I'm going to measure his brain with 𝐒𝐸𝐺. I said, anybody in the room never meditate? Somebody raised their hand. I brought him up. And with BrainTap, I matched that guy's brain frequencies. They said, that's impossible. You just cheated. I remember Varun, who's now one of our research people, Dr. Varun, and he says, that's cheating. And I said, Varun, that's not cheating. That's using technology. I said, have you ever meditated to a candle? He said, yeah. I said, that's cheating. That candle's flickering at 10 hertz frequency. I said, have you ever meditated to music? Yeah, that's cheating. Because the music sets up the situation. I said, we're just using technology. It's a new way of doing something. So a lot of people think, I don't need that, I meditate. But I can tell you right now, when you meditate, the Dalai Lama says this default mode network is your monkey mind.
Yeah.
I've only measured less than 5 people in 30,000 brains that knows how to meditate. Wow. They're meditating, but their monkey mind takes over. They're creating more stress in their environment than they are good, because they don't know how. What we're doing is you need energy. You probably said this with your kids. My kids are too tired to sleep. Most adults are too tired to meditate, too tired to sleep, because their brain doesn't have energy. So we're going to produce light energy. Your brain absorbs that light, and you start, after about 2 minutes, you have energy in your brain. Your body's asleep, but your brain's awake. Now you can do the work. You can get the brain frequencies going. Once the brain is in harmony, you'll create all these brain waves when you need them, as you need them. So it's kind of like, you don't need to sprint all the time, but if you have the capacity to sprint, it's a good thing. You don't have to run for miles, but if you have the capacity to run for miles, that's a good thing. But you want to have the capacity. So I always tell people, it's not about reducing stress. Stress is going to be here, and it's your perception of reality that's stressful, not reality. So if you can build the capacity in your brain, now you can handle those situations, and that negative naysayer or that negative event or that, like you said, learning new things or sports, it comes easier to those people that relax into it.
What and about in regards to let's say geographical locations of where you exist. Like I've had a conversation with somebody recently that moved from Seattle, which is kind of a gloomy town and foggy, to Florida, which is all sunny, and they said they did it for their daughter and she feels better here, etc. This is obviously a thing.
Yeah, it's called seasonal affective disorder.
Okay.
And it really blows my mind. A lot of the biohackers will be wearing blue blocker glasses in the morning. At 6 o'clock at night, wear those glasses. But in the morning, you need as much blue light as possible. We live in a blue light planet, and if we don't get that blue light, our body will not create the serotonin and the norepinephrine, all the good neurotransmitters we need to make us feel good. So then they went from this. I grew up in Michigan, so we were second to Seattle. Everybody there is depressed. They work in factories, and I always tell my friends, I go, I-94 drives out of town, right? Because and there's another reason why we all live near water. Yeah. Because water has a vibratory frequency of 10 hertz. We seek out water.
I love when you go to the ocean. I personally cannot live away from water.
Right. Because your body, your cells know you're creating you're creating so much. You have a chemical factory in your brain, and it's a pharmacy. It's the most powerful pharmacy on earth. 30,000 different neurochemicals can be released by thoughts, by things, by environments, by everything. Remember, your DNA is rebraiding every 40 seconds. Which means you are adapting. You have an adaptive system. So if you always have to adapt to a low one, for a while you can do it. You got the energy, but pretty soon, if it's constantly bombarding you, then you go down. That's why things like infrared saunas, PMF, BrainTap, all these cold plunges, all these things help to regulate our nervous system so that we can be more prepared to change, because that's the one constant in the universe.
I love it. So Patrick, let's talk a little bit more about BrainTap. What's the vision for this product, and who is this geared towards? Who is your client? Where do you see BrainTap going in the future?
Well, our goal is to better 1 billion brains. That's why we went into India. We're just launching in India, and we have the universities helping us do that. But the thing is that just like physical fitness, in the 70s when I was going to school, you probably won't believe this, but they were trying to block us putting in a gym in our school. Wow. The mothers all petitioned that we would stunt our growth, that we shouldn't build muscle. Now, this seems ridiculous now, but in the 70s, people thought that was the case. Now, nobody will argue with you that physical fitness is needed today. I think brain fitness will be the same thing in less than 10 years, because we're proving it in science. We took people on the dementia scale. There's a book called Saving Your Brain that Dr. Kelly Miller wrote about our study down in Florida. We took everybody off the dementia scale in 6 weeks. It's an energy problem. It is about the food they're consuming, but even diets. The reason diets don't work, it's not what you're eating. When I was featured in People magazine back in 2006, I didn't have a diet. And they go, how are these people losing weight without any diet? And I said, it's not about your diet. It's about what's eating you. If we can change what's eating you, you'll change what you're eating. But if you don't change what's eating you...
And it all starts with the brain. I mean, it's your brain accepting that. And you mentioned sugar and these, big sodas with your meal. To me, just personally from experience, I've worked out, I've done martial arts, I've done other sports. I think if your brain's not right, the exercise part is not consistent. It's not as effective. The eating's not as consistent, not as effective. And it all starts with the brain. So when you mention that, I think brain fitness is going to be the next big thing, or it's going to be more prevalent in the future. I find that to be really true. I think it's more important than the fitness aspect because it's like the foundation.
Yeah. And we believe you have to move and breathe for your brain to function. You create something called BD and F. Think of it as miracle growth for your brain. So we all know people that started exercising, they become more positive but the thing to do is after you're exercising, sit down for 5 minutes without moving and just breathe. Let that BD&A do its work. And you'll find your workouts will be much better. I did an article in Brain Fitness magazine because I write for them sometimes. And I told them it's called the acetylcholine that releases. And you actually produce more muscle. That's why you're going to the gym anyway. But a lot of people work out, they stress out, then they run to their car, they get a protein drink on the way home. They did everything to destroy all the BDNF that they did. Take a few minutes. It doesn't have to be long. 5 minutes can be all it takes.
Right after the workout?
Right after the workout.
Sit there?
right out of the, and do some breathing here. Do that. Do like the 4-8 breath that we teach for sleep. You know, or maybe you do psychological. Do some kind of breathing. Keep your nervous system. You want to train your nervous system to have that going all the time.
And that breathing is 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out?
It's 4 seconds. You breathe in, hold it for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds, hold it out for 4 seconds. They call it a box breath.
Box breath. I see.
Like the Navy SEALs use it on deployment, because imagine how stressed you are. You're one of 5 people going to take on a battleship. I mean, I'm sure
those guys are crazy. I've had several on the podcast that they're always fun, and some of our characters. But yeah, that I wonder. Have you ever put the BrainTap on the Navy SEAL?
Oh yeah, we're deployed right now in South Africa with special forces. It's a wellness device, so you don't have to have a problem to use it. You can optimize brain thinking. Like when people like professional sports, the 2 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl were BrainTap users. Tom Brady's one of our biggest advocates, in Alex Guerrero. So we have people that want to maximize brain function. We have people that have stress in their life that want to just improve their sleep, improve their ability to function in the daily life. So really, we have children's programs. We have 3,000 sessions, and they're specifically targeted to different things. And then we have general sessions that are just music for people that want to do their own thing, so they can just get into those brainwave states and do their own meditations. We have those too. Well,
I could tell by your energy that you're high energy, and you probably hang around high energy people. You mentioned even Tom Brady at this point, so I get it. And honestly, it makes sense. I think what I take from your last statement is something doesn't need to be broken in order for you to improve it. So, you gotta optimize yourself. And it seems like BrainTap is something that people should look into, and the breathing techniques you mentioned, and the bubbles and the open window. And,
all those techniques, there's hundreds of techniques. My book, Discover the Language of the Mind, I talk about how the brain processes information, and they can go to braintap.com and get a free trial. 90% of people will report back they had their best night's sleep after their 3rd night of using it. So the brain learns the algorithm, and you start sleeping better. And if you have a way to measure it, that's even better, because sometimes we, on a conscious level, don't know what's happening, but our biological system is keeping score. If you have an illness in your body right now, that's your body keeping score. There's something that needs to change physically, mentally,
and you
emotionally,
mentioned
spiritually.
Earlier in the podcast, you mentioned positive reinforcement kind of when you were sent to your room. I imagine BrainTap gives you some positive reinforcements in the audio part of it.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of encouragement. We call it positive psychology. We don't use negative conditioning. That doesn't work. So it's all positive conditioning.
Do people wear this device to sleep, or are they
can using it? There's 3 times a day we recommend brain fitness. First is in the morning, because we got to win the morning to win the day. So and it's only 10 minutes. And it'll give you high energy. Then in the middle of the day, when you have that crash, if you can't do it in the middle of the day, do it when you get home from work. You'll have more energy for your family. And then at night, do it right before sleep. Now, some people will use the headset at night. Some people just listen to the sound. They just put the sound on. They put their phone on. You can download the session, then put your phone on airplane mode. Listen to the session. It will shut off at the end, and you'll go to sleep.
And what's the cost of the headset right now, currently?
It's $649.
Okay.
There's a special on the website. I think they can get the app and the headset for a year for like $749 or something like that.
And then the app costs for a year currently
right now it's $260 for the year, or $30 a month.
Oh, okay. Very good. I mean, for health and fitness, it's incredible.
That's less than $1 a day, and your whole family can use it. That's the nice thing.
So, okay. So it's not, it's a family kind of plan, or do they have profiles in it where it's...
Yeah, if you have it on your phone, you keep your profile, they'll keep it on theirs. You can have 2 different apps using it at the same time.
So, that's great. Dr. Patrick Porter, CEO of BrainTap, energy. We've talked about frequencies. We've talked about saunas. I mean, so much knowledge. You're high energy yourself. So I know you're a little bit older than me. At your age, I hope to have that energy. And I thank you so much for coming on the Ideal Hour podcast, sharing your experience here. I know you're going to Italy, so have fun on that trip as well. And I appreciate you. And I hope the listeners enjoyed this podcast as much as I did.
Thank you, Simon. Good to be here.
Thank you. And we'll link all of your info below. Instagram at Dr. Patrick Porter, and then BrainTap is the website you guys should check out. Thank you for coming on, Patrick, and thank you for watching, guys.